Good morning, everybody. My name is Gery Pollet. I'm from Belgium, from the beautiful city of Bruges. That's where we live. Eh? Belgium is famous for its beer, but I have to admit that yesterday we drank some very good local beers here. So anyway, I'm here to talk about the Sensing's smart healthcare platform, and maybe a little story on forehand. Last year in September, I was invited by one of the largest hospitals in Belgium to talk about Internet of Things and Internet of Medical Things. And at the end of the presentation, they said to me, "We want that." And I say, unfortunately, I came here to explain a vision about what's going to be possible in the future, but what you want is not yet available. And they say, "But can you build it for us?" And I have done several startups in the past, so I said, yes, I can build it based upon one condition, that you give me an order. And by the end of December, they placed an order. In January, I selected the different partners to help building it. And actually, it went live 1 month ago. And from day one, I knew that I wanted to use FileMaker for building this. But on the other hand, I also knew that FileMaker had some shortcomings and that I needed to solve them in another way. So this presentation has, in fact, 3 parts. The first part is really about the business challenges. What is it that hospitals or healthcare in general is looking for? Secondly, we are going to talk about the technology challenges. And finally, I'm going to give very briefly some FileMaker examples. By the way, I contacted in January, February, several FileMaker developers to explain the concept, to ask for advice. So some of them are here in the room. Thank you very much for your feedback.
And you didn't contact me.
Not everybody. So part 1, business challenges. What we learned about this, or discussions with the first hospital, but in the meantime we are now in contact with over 25 hospitals, is that typically if a hospital has, for instance, 1,000 beds, they need to keep track and trace of around 10,000 assets around a hospital bed. This goes from the patient, of course, but also the beds, the mattresses, the medical equipment around it, etc. So hospitals are really looking for what is called RTLS, Real-Time Location System solutions. These type of things already exist for a very long time, but unfortunately have been very, very expensive. Yeah. The second challenge we discovered with hospitals, and I have an example with me, more and more they are putting these kind of devices on patients. And these are health sensors. Normally they connect with the gateway next to the patient's bed. This one, for instance, is made by Philips, and it captures over 7 parameters like temperature, blood pressure, heart beat, etc. So also the question there is, we have all this data coming from the patients, but we don't want these gateways next to the patient's bed, because if we move the patient to another room and we forget the gateway, so how can we cope with that? So we decided that Bluetooth was the right technology to do these kind of things. This is an Ericsson report, and everybody is talking about Internet of Things, and mainly the operators talk about 4G and 5G. The most important thing, one of the most important things to remember today, is that probably by the end of this decade, next decade, over 99% of all devices will be connected via Bluetooth. So Internet of Things devices will be connected via Bluetooth. So what's happening, very briefly, we see more and more access points, like here you have Cisco. More and more of these professional access points come now these days with built-in Bluetooth. It means they can see devices, they can see medical sensors, etc. You can do very accurate positioning with Bluetooth, up to a few centimeters these days. This health device I just showed you from Philips, it's already Bluetooth enabled. And also very important, what we see appearing this year, mass production 2021, are the first battery-free Bluetooth devices. Size and thickness of a postage stamp, price less than $50. Yeah? So with our platform, we enabled several use cases, asset tracking, patient tracking, staff tracking, and Internet of Medical Things. Today I'm going to focus a bit on asset tracking. How is it working? Very easily. I have an example of a Bluetooth tag. This is a tag. You put this on, for instance, a medical device or a medical or a bed or a wheelchair you want to track throughout the hospital. It emits a signal being captured, for instance, by these Bluetooth locators or these Wi-Fi access points, and all the data is streamed to a central platform. And then via REST APIs, people can interact with the data. They can ask where a certain asset is. They can see, for instance, the temperature of a patient and things like that. Some use cases: indoor location, live inventory. We ordered 300 wheelchairs. How many are on site? Monitoring of temperature in fridges. Refill and usage, a button if something is for instance, needs a refill. Theft notification if something leaves the building. Patient flows, how long a patient has been in the surgery room, for instance. How many times the restrooms are utilized. Panic button, fall detection, wandering patients. The business model we did, it's very simple. We rent these things at the price of around $1 per asset you want to track, which includes usage of the platform and also all the hardware. Yeah?
It's monthly?
It's a monthly fee, yeah, with a contract of 4 years. So that's the business model. Of course, when we started with the whole project to define it, we had some technology challenges. The first and major challenge was the data volume. To give you an example, an average hospital generates with these tags around 100 gigabytes of data a month. So to import all this data in FileMaker, that's really a problem. That's not something that you use FileMaker for. Next challenge was data handling. Most of this data is unstructured. We don't know how the structure of the data will look like. And also, talking with hospitals, this hospital wants this, the other hospital wants that. So it's very difficult to define the use cases on forehand. So we needed something that allowed us to develop something in a very easy way. So how it works, the platform. Big data output. So imagine you're in a hospital. These are what we call the Wi-Fi access points with Bluetooth. They are connected to a central Wi-Fi controller. And of course, they see a lot of data. They see, for instance, all the Bluetooth headsets. They also see all the iPhones. And this is data we don't need. So on-premise, we have a locator proxy that filters out only that data that we need and converts it into an MQTT message. Yeah? And this way, we can already save probably 90% of the data we can delete. Yeah? And from there, we send it to Amazon. So the second part is then what we call the big data intake. What we are using there is mainly DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL-based database of Amazon, which is very suitable for a massive amount of data. 100 gigabytes, it's no problem for it. The only problem with DynamoDB, it's not very suited for doing complex searches. So what we did next is, via Lambda functions, we send out the data we need, for instance, the tag data of the last couple of days to a MySQL database, which is also running on Amazon, which is called Aurora. Yeah. And this allowed us to intake a lot of data and to store it in a very efficient way. Yeah. And then finally, of course, FileMaker. We looked at several ways to connect with FileMaker. At the end, we decided to go for the REST APIs. So on Amazon, we created a whole interface, REST API interface. And on FileMaker itself, on the cloud, I think we created around 20 scripts, which allows us to do almost everything that the hospital would need. So for us, the combination AWS and FileMaker is really a match in heaven. AWS gives us a scalability, massive data intake, scalability, performance, redundancy, where FileMaker gives us the flexibility. It's a rapid prototyping environment, gives us advanced business logic that hospitals want, and easy to use tools, for instance, for visualization and generating of reports. Some examples, very briefly. I have to tell you, we developed this together with Listerius, because I'm not a FileMaker developer myself, so I reached out to one of the parties in Belgium that helped us develop that. This is a screenshot of FileMaker, so when you launch it, you immediately see how many tags are online of the total number of tags, so 4,287 on a total of 5,150. You also see how many locators or Wi-Fi access points have been seen the last couple of hours, number of locations, and also notifications. And now Siri wants to do something. I'm not going into detail into the scripts, but if you're interested, I can always send it afterwards or give you even a demo account so you can play with it. Yeah. Another example is once you're logged in into FileMaker, it's you can do a search, like for instance operating rooms. It will give you a list of the different operating rooms in the hospital, and it shows immediately the number of tags, so assets that you want to track in each hospital room. And just by clicking on lists, you see a very detailed overview of the tags in a particular room. Finally, and I was very happy this morning that I heard that NFC is going to be part of FileMaker Go. This is also an app that hospitals like to use. For instance, imagine I want to put this tag, which has also NFC built in. I put it, for instance, on a machine I want to track and trace. With the FileMaker Go app, we scan the barcode of the machine, we read the NFC tag, we say link, and it's linked together on the hospital, on our smart healthcare platform, which means that the hospital, they can enter the existing reference number that they are using to find where some item is located. And I just heard I had 2 minutes left, but this was actually the last slide, so thank you very much.